Start, sir.
My dear friends, today is April 21, 2020, and I am going to deal with a topic from Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. The topic I have in mind is love's ultimate triumph over hatred. Now, if we say that this novel's plot concerns the representation of love's ultimate triumph over hatred, then we are taking as our major premise certain very important philosophical doctrines. First of all, we are placing love and hatred as primary human emotions and putting them at loggerheads with each other. That means as being opposed to each other. Love is opposed to hatred, just as hatred is opposed to love. We are also taking for our major premise the idea that love and hatred has a struggle, a contest in which love ultimately triumphs over hatred, defeats hatred. But at the same time, because we are using the adverb ultimately as the final analysis, that means there may be in the struggle between love and hatred certain temporal junctures, certain temporal points at which hatred must be uppermost and seem to triumph over love. Ultimately, however, it is love that, if we actually follow this premise, love's ultimate triumph over hatred, then obviously, ultimately at the final analysis, love triumphs over, defeats hatred. Now, we all know that love is something that wants to do good to others or to see others or the self at a comfortable situation. If it is love for others, obviously the lover wants to see the loved ones as comfortable as possible. If it is, on the contrary, self-love, then obviously the lover loves the self and wants to see the self placed in a comfortable, secure position. On the contrary, hatred is a negative mental instinct that wants to see others or the self at a disadvantage, to do harm to the others or the self. Now, let us, from the very beginning, think about the votaries of love and the votaries of hatred. Who love in this novel and who hate in this novel? Before we do this, we must think about the reasons or circumstances that may motivate someone either to love or to hate. Because both love and hatred are some kind of involvement, to say the least. So, what motivates someone to love or hate or go outside the equilibrium or statu quo of human satiety needs to be analyzed at the same time. In other words, we must understand or try to understand what causes someone to love going beyond the equilibrium, the sthitavastha, or what causes someone to hate, again going beyond the equilibrium. Because these are involvements, as Kamala Das has pointed out in one of her poems. Now, who are the lovers and why? Similarly, who are the haters and why? We'll see. As lovers, we will find out certain individuals. As haters, we may find out certain other individuals. But similarly, we have to understand that one does not remain a lover all the time, one does not remain a hater all the time. It may so happen that a lover may hate or a hater may love at different situations. Dr. Manet loves his family. Dr. Manet loves his duty as a physician. But at the same time, Dr. Manet, the Evermond brothers, whose inhuman torture of the girl and her brother really upset him to such an extent that he ignores any consideration for his personal safety and dares to write a letter denouncing the Evermond brothers. The Evermond brothers hate because they find in Dr. Manet a threat. Next, there springs a peculiar kind of love between the helpless child Lucy and the responsible banker Jarvis Lorry, who is so affectionate towards the little girl that she personally accompanies her to England and places her under the control of, under the care of Miss Frost. Miss Frost loves her ladybird with all her being. Similarly, Charles Darnay also loves Lucy, just as Sidney Carton also. Lucy loves Darnay, even though she is not romantically attached to Sidney Carton. She is at least sympathetic towards him. At the same time, Charles Darnay hates even the memory of the excesses committed by his aristocratic forebears. As a result, he shuns his family's title and surname and takes up his mother's surname. and also thinks of living as a private tutor in London in self-exile. But at the same time, there are haters, other haters. For example, there is Madame Defarge and Monsieur Defarge, who hate the aristocrats with all their beings. It is the cruel excesses of the aristocrats and the monarchy in France that lead to an atmosphere of overwhelming hatred of the lower classes felt towards the aristocrats. This feeling culminates in the outbreak of the revolution, and during the revolution, obviously, the pent up hatred of the teeming millions ultimately finds its outlet in acts of utter heedless cruelty and chaotic reprisals. It is, in a way, the selfless love of Sidney Carton that turns the tables, and along with Sidney Carton, there is also Miss Frost, who, in her own way, brings about the final overthrow of hatred as typified or personified by Madame de French. Here, I must remember to clarify one doubt of Saurav Hajra, who had asked me to enlighten you regarding the partial treatment of Charles Dickens towards Lucy Manet. Saurav has pointed out how both Lucy Manet and Madame Defarge come from dysfunctional, disturbed family and childhood, respectively. How they have also been victims of the social inequity prevalent in the pre-revolutionary France. But Saurav wants me to clarify why and how Dickens seems to be more sympathetic towards and careful of the image that we create of Lucy Manet. At the same time, Charles Dickens seems to paint Madame Defarge in a dark light. Now, there is something called authorial intention, and there is something else called narratorial perspective. In every story, be it told in the form of a poem or a novel or short story or a play, we will see that the author takes up a particular perspective. And in more cases than not, the author, if it is not a play, in most cases, the author seems to support and justify one at the cost of another. Just as in Paradise Lost, Milton, as they say, was unknowingly to himself on the rebels' party. Similarly, in this novel, it seems that Charles Darnay actually preferred Lucy Manet over Madame Defarge. It has got a specific reason because the message intended for this novel is one of optimism. Writing 20 years after the outbreak of the French Revolution, Charles Dickens wanted to point out how hatred cannot ultimately conquer human hearts and ultimately love reasserts its domain over the human psyche. In this novel, we will see that despite the heaped up hatred, people like Lucy, Dr. Manet, Sidney Carton, Charles Darnay, Jarvis Lorry, and Miss Fox, in their own way, seem to support the cause of love. Whereas the revolutionaries, the French revolutionaries, whose excesses actually degenerate the revolution into an irrational bloodbath, ultimately stand for the pro-death or thanatotic forces. That is why creation, love, and the eros, as exemplified by the characters I have already talked about, seems to conquer over hatred. If not over hatred, at least over haters. That is why we'll see that of the two important dead persons from among the major characters, it is Sidney Carton who chooses to die the death of a martyr, and it is Madame Defarge, the inveterate hater of all things aristocratic, he is accidentally killed like a dog. I would like to welcome any query that you may have in this regard, any doubt. I have already provided you with materials for preparing answers to such a probable topic. And the only thing that I would like to point out in fine is that love and hatred in A Tale of Two Cities never take only one or stereotypical manifestations. There is romantic love. There is also universal love or agape. Agape is spelled as A-G-A-P-E. Agape. It's a Greco-Christian concept which points out the love for the universal brotherhood. It is a kind of philia. And hatred, similarly, is not only caused by revenge or vengeance. It has got other channels. For example, dislike often crystallizes into hatred. I hope this discussion will help you in understanding the subtle dynamics of the struggle between love and hatred in A Tale of Two Cities. So, until we meet again and talk again about